welcome to this month's video. Orthotics, how do I get someone to buy? Buy, sell, marketing, dirty words in the health game. But are they really? At the end of the day, we're in the business of professionally and ethically selling to people a treatment plan to help resolve their symptoms or improve their lifestyle. So marketing is education. Selling is getting people to buy into what you've suggested and outlined to them as being the best option to move them in the direction that they wish to go, whether it be to resolve that pain, help to avoid injury going forward, or just to get more comfortable. Now the reality is orthotics form a very high proportion of our billings, proportionally when compared to, say, general foot care, etc. Now, because they are considered quite a big ticket item, there's an awful lot of scarcity out there around, whether we should be prescribing orthotics. Are they evidence-based treatment options, etc. And it's something that a lot of people have a lot of negativity towards. However, I'm of the totally opposite opinion. I have used orthotics myself for 25, 26 years. I wear them every day. I've been working as a podiatrist for 14 years and I've used them extensively with my patients to great effect. And so I have an inherent belief in that they are a useful treatment option and a useful adjunct to the treatment plans that I prescribe. One of the messages I would like to try and get across with this video is that whether you're using orthotics or whether you're using other aspects of treatment plan, is we need to be able to educate our patients on the value of what we're suggesting, not so much the price. You can suggest a pair of prescription orthotics and the patient says, well, I can buy a pair of $40 off-the-shelf devices from a chemist. Why should I do that? Why shouldn't I do that, sorry. So therefore they don't understand the value. Now can you imagine working in a world where patients came into your rooms, you diagnose the problem, you educate the patient on why it is occurring and how you will avoid it going further, avoid it in the future. And then you outline the treatment plan, and that treatment plan can be carried out because there's no money involved. There's no cost for scans, there's no cost for the orthotics, there's no cost for the new particular running shoes or maybe custom made footwear. Now what sort of stress would that take off that consultation process? Years ago I worked at the Melbourne Commonwealth Games and it was exactly the world that I operated in because the athletes weren't paying for their treatments. So we could work together with other professionals and basically give them the perfect treatment plan. And it was brilliant. It was probably two of the most enjoyable weeks of my life as a podiatrist. And it's because money was removed from the equation. It starts with a question. Greg asked me a question. There's Greg Gunther, one of the mentors in the Hive, asked me a question many years ago. He said, why is it, Troy, that you bill 2 to 3 times more than all your other podiatrists? And my initial reflex response is that, well, obviously, I've been here for a very long time, I've got a good name, and I have a very large biomechanical load because that is my interest. But as we kind of dig deeper, we actually looked into why I actually did bill more, was that I had filters off, my eyes were wide open on the opportunities of where I could help people come into my room. Someone may be coming in with a recurrent corn, etc., or a recurrent pressure lesion. I'm looking at options to prevent that from coming back. They're coming in with their son who's got Sever's disease, and they've got the other 2 kids who are playing soccer as well and getting heel pain as well. I then start talking to those patients as well. So there was a lot of questions that started to run around in my head as to why I could bill more than my pods. And one of the key things is that I have unwavering belief in what I do and unwavering belief in the treatment options that I prescribe. Orthotics do form a very large part of what of my treatment plans. And like I said earlier, I've been wearing them for 25, 26 years. I've been a podiatrist for 14 years, using them extensively, and I know they work. I know that I'm more comfortable with them. I know I get injured less frequently with them, and I know that I perform better with them. So when I prescribe them, I can do that with confidence. Now, while we're on questions, there's nothing more frustrating than when you outline a treatment plan and your patients don't follow through with it. So why don't they? And there's 4 main reasons. 1, they don't trust you. Now, when I say this, they haven't formed the bond yet, where they trust your opinion. That's part of the education process when you get to know someone, as part of the rapport building process. It's about getting people to like you. When people like you, that leads to them trusting you, to relating to you. So that's the first one. They don't trust you. 2, they don't think there's enough benefit in what you're suggesting to spend the money. 3, they don't understand what you're saying. You're using too much jargon. You're simplifying things too much. They don't understand why they need to do this process. Or 4, they think it's too expensive. They focus on the price, they don't understand the value. And what happens if one of these 4 options pop up? They don't make a decision. They don't book the next appointment. They don't get the scan. They don't change the shoes. They certainly don't go through the initiation of the orthotic process. And where does that get you? That leads to frustration. And what is the answer to avoiding these 4 things? It's education. Through education, we develop our trust. This is where you spend a lot of time fully explaining to the patient what is actually causing their symptoms. You spend a lot of time explaining to them how the biomechanical factors that you've detected actually influence these symptoms. You use a video gait analysis where you break down in slow motion and demonstrate to the patient what is going wrong with their gait pattern. It all comes back to education. And if we don't educate, we sell ourselves short and people don't follow through on what we're suggesting. As a rule, podiatrists underestimate what they do, and they certainly undervalue it. I'm quite amazed where I'll have someone new a podiatrist, and they know that a prescription orthotic may be the best option to help prevent this problem recurring long term down the track. And so they may just say, oh look, you could benefit from this. Could? I'm not going to follow through on that, are you? Should? I'm more likely to follow it. Or you must get this. This will make a huge difference, in addition to the strapping, the shoes, the exercise, etc., etc. My young pods think about $500 and say, geez, I have a lot of trouble telling someone they need to pay $500 for something. $500 for something that's made for them lasts at least 3 to 4 years. They can wear it every single day and it doesn't wear out. It's going to help reduce their symptoms, if not remove them, and help prevent them coming back. In my opinion, it's money well spent. Of course, then you've got the health funds which contribute, which halves that cost. And then you may compare that to a prefabricated device, which in some cases all a patient may need. But if it's a long-term option and you've got an 85 kilo plus male who's going to compress these devices in 9 to 10 months, and they're shilling out $80 to $100 every 8 to 10 months, all of a sudden they've far eclipsed the outlay of what those devices were to start with. So that's where people are, and even the podiatrists, are underestimating the value of these devices. Now, I'm not saying you prescribe them to people who don't need them or who won't benefit. This is a very clear distinction. What I'm trying to say is we don't want to be missing the opportunity where people who should be getting them aren't, because we aren't educating them and conveying the value well enough. Now, it's the classic example of, with a mechanic. You can I drop my car into the mechanic to have the oil changed. they'll change the oil, and they'll find that my tyres are beyond the wear line. And he rings up and says, Troy, we've done the oil, we've done the minor service, it's $120, but you need 4 new tyres. Now, it might hurt a bit, but you need them. You know the value of tyres. So you get them. In my car, that's a $2,500 purchase. I may try and get an extra few Ks before I do it, but you need them. So I'm educated on why I need tyres. With our patients, we need to educate them on why they need that $500 device. A further example is, you've dropped your car in for an oil service, and it might have been getting hot as well, and they detect that the water pump's gone, and they say, well, look, it's going to cost $800 to $900. I think, bloody hell, that's a lot of money. But then the mechanic invites me down and shows me where the water pump is, and shows me what's involved in actually getting to the water pump, and the man hours that it takes to get that water pump out, shows me a worn water pump, explains what it does, and shows me a new one, and it describes the improved efficiency and the improved performance of my car as a result. And I see the amount of work involved, and all of a sudden I can rationalise the value. And so, that $800 to $900 isn't a difficult decision for me. Now we start with, how would I get someone to buy? One of the traps some of my new podiatrists will fall into is they focus on the price. So it's not about the price, it's about the value. As I said before, we often underestimate our value. So one of the traps my new podiatrists fall into is they focus on the cost. They underestimate the value, or they don't educate the patient on the value. And that's why you don't lead with these orthotics are going to cost you $500. You basically lead with the education. You describe the benefits of what these devices are going to do, the improved comfort, the resolution of the symptoms, how it's going to expedite their recovery. So the education comes first. The price comes second. People will, will ask, so how much is all this going to cost? Look, that's a really good question. But before I go into the cost, would you feel comfortable with me actually explaining in detail what's involved in the process and what these devices will do for you? You then explain that they'll be basically coming in as part of that cost of the $500 and the $600 or whatever it is. You're basically going through a very thorough biomechanical examination where you'll be testing muscle strength, muscle function, joint range of motion, etc. You're taking specific measurements to help form the prescription for the orthotics. You're doing a detailed video gait analysis where you'll be breaking down in slow motion the various aspects of the gait of the gait process and which factors might be conspiring to the symptoms or the recurrent injuries that the person may be experiencing. Next, we're going to be taking a CAD/CAM scan of your foot, basically using a machine that costs $80,000, where we take a 3D image of your foot, and that's used to generate the orthotic. We then use a state-of-the-art CAD/CAM mill, which basically grinds out the device to the precise, it's accurate to 1/10 of a millimetre to the precise measurements for your foot. These will then be handcrafted to suit your individual footwear. We'll then be getting you back in for a dispense. These devices will last you at least 3 to 4 years. Of the cost, it gets to about $500, more than half of which you'll be getting back through your health fund. All of a sudden, the person's then getting much greater understanding on the value. Sometimes, people say, no, I don't want to hear all that, just tell me the price. Don't be annoying, tell them, but always try and bring it back to value. People basically don't want to have to make decisions, and that's where I educate my team on telling patients these are the options that are best for you, and then explaining to them the various aspects of the process. And generally patients are very happy to follow the treatment program. If at the end of the day it is too expensive, by all means you then discuss the options. They may want to discuss with their partner, by all means. So look, would you like me to give you a call tomorrow that we can answer any questions that your partner or your spouse may have around these devices? It's about providing that education, and the reality is the more people you actually educate around this decision, the better it is for you going forward, and the more compliant your patient's more likely to be. So at the end of the day, the key to being a great pod is educating your patient to follow your recommendations. So how do I get people to buy orthotics? It's through education. It's through education and developing trust. As long as people understand, they're more likely to follow through. And when they start using these options and you're not missing opportunities, it's usually with your junior pods of these opportunities.